Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
For those that are here, welcome. If you're here for the first time, we don't have you introduce yourself. I'm Laura McCready, one of the facilitators of Tuesday Morning Forum, along with Mary Johnson, Jackie Edwards, Natalie McElroy, Winston Robinson, and Helena Ivory, and Sarita Sherrill is usually with us. Jackie, would you lead us in a word of prayer, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Lord, for your so very good. As we convene this morning, that those who are here, that you keep them safe. Those that are online, keep them safe also. Let us learn today from candidates who are offering themselves to better our community. In the name of the soon coming King.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. As you all know, we have with us this morning candidates at large for city council seats have been invited. We did get a word from Smudgy that he's not feeling well, and two other Jackie that you know that's not going to be here.
Dimple's not is out of town, and David had a dental procedure that he could not reschedule again, and Carrie has someone coming to her house that she cannot reschedule.
Okay. But anyway, we are happy that you all are here, and thank you for coming. And the way we facilitate the Tuesday Morning Forum is that each one of you would have at least 5 minutes to do your presentation. And after that, we get questions. We may get questions from people that are with us here in the audience, or we may get questions from those that are viewing us online through Facebook or through live streaming. So, and we will facilitate the questions and answers. We are asking that if you have any questions, that you direct it to the individual that you would like to answer the question. If you'd like for all three of them to answer the questions, just indicate that in your questions that you're asking. So without any further ado, once again, thank you all for coming. And we'll start with you, sir. If you introduce yourself, and once you introduce yourself, and we'll come back to, or I'd like for you all to introduce yourselves first, and then we'll start with you, and you'll have a 5-minute presentation.
Okay.
And excuse me, one more thing. Natalie is our timekeeper, and she will let you know when you have 30 seconds left, up to 30 seconds, and that's when your time is out.
So this is not the 5-minute section, just so clear. Okay.
That's introduction.
I'm Charlie Mulligan, running for Charlotte City Council at large. So great to see you guys here this morning.
I'm apparently Charlie's twin. Just the exact same. We did not schedule that. I'm Kyle Lubke, running for City Council at large.
What's your last name, Charlie?
Lubke. Lubke. Luebke.
And good morning, family. I am Lawana Slight Mayfield. So good morning to those who are in attendance as well as those who are joining online. I am running for City Council at large. I formerly served you representing District 3 for 8 years on Charlotte City Council.
Okay, thank you.
Now 5-minute presentation. Okay. All right. 5 minutes for a politician. All right. Well, it's great to be with all of you this morning. Again, my name is Charlie. I'm a lifetime Charlottean. So I grew up here in Charlotte. My family moved down here when I was 2 years old from the DC area. But this is the first time that I've run for office. And that's because I love Charlotte dearly. This is where I want to spend the rest of my life. And I believe so much in the potential of our city. But unfortunately, and I'm sure many here in the room are aware of this, there are many ways in which we have failed to live up to that potential, in my opinion. And so my vision for what Charlotte looks like is 3 things. I want to see a Charlotte that is thriving in all parts of town. I want to see a Charlotte that is truly multicultural. And I want to see a Charlotte that is in touch with its southern roots. And I think when it comes to city council, one of the major concerns that I have is oftentimes it's unclear what the vision for our city, from our current city council is. And I'm not sure how many, actually I'll ask for a show of hands. Did anybody attend or watch the Charlotte City Council business meeting last night? Okay, well, I'll explain it to those who didn't. I think these were some good examples. So we had about 60 people there who had lost their businesses due to the city shutting down the open air market that used to be held at what is now the Eastland site, or what was the Eastland site, I should say. This happens. We need to redevelop the Eastland site. I'm in full support of that. The issue is that the city promised these individuals that they would find a new site for them 7 months ago. And they've heard crickets since then. Now, city staff has apparently been working on it, but there was no communication. There's been very few updates and no resolution. And so I met an individual who was now $30,000 in debt on his Amex credit cards due to actions of the city. We also had a long discussion about source of income discrimination and ending that for landlords that get city support, which is something I completely support. But the issue was, it was so difficult to actually, due to the confusion around the issue, so difficult to actually get the information out. And I think we as a city are struggling about who we want to be. And that's why I decided to run. So the three things: thriving, multicultural, southern. We know the parts of town that are thriving. We know the parts of town that historically haven't. If you want to get something taken care of in South End or South Charlotte, it happens lickety-split. However, for anybody who's been on the east side, north side, east side, west side, it's not quite the same. And I think we all know that. And we need to make investments in actually creating sustainable job opportunities, creating a pipeline of small businesses, especially for minority and women-owned small businesses, and actually creating a path to home ownership so we can create generational wealth. Second, multicultural. We are almost a majority minority city here in Charlotte. And so we have this tremendous opportunity to be that rare example where all cultures have the ability to stand on their own 2 feet in this city. But unfortunately, we do a terrible job of platform. I call this the Charlotte way. We don't platform anybody who doesn't look like our existing conception of what Charlotte is. So if you're not a banker bro, if you're an artist, member of cultural, if you're a small business owner, it is so difficult to get that to that next step. And that's something we need to change. And the last thing is our heritage. Why do we always bulldoze the old and replace it with the shiny and the new in this city? I think we have a bit of a keeping up with the Joneses complex in our city. And so whatever is the fancy new program, we go for it. And instead of recognizing and being in touch with what makes us who we are. And that's why I always try to attend these community meetings, because community organizations like this one are the soul of our city, and we need to be more in touch with those. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to your questions.
All right, thank you all for having me. My name is Kyle Lupke. As I said, I'm running for City Council at large. I got involved in this race because I was riding the bus and I was talking with somebody, and it was taking her an hour and a half to get to work one way. My fiance Brian and I used to live in Enderley Park, and it was on the 8. She worked at the airport. 10-minute drive from Enderley Park to the airport, but an hour and a half on the bus. She's a single mom of 4 kids, and that's 3 hours per day that she was not able to spend time with her kids, was not able to spend time, in her community, and spend time with bettering herself. We cannot talk about upward mobility if someone is on the bus for 3 hours a day. So when I, had that experience, had that conversation, I started looking at other areas that we could improve upon as a city. and I really focused my campaign on three main areas: transportation, housing affordability, and public safety. On the transportation side, I've already said, I'm a bus rider. I experience the issues with our CAT system every single day. Today alone, 98 bus operators called out. 98. In Q3 of last year, over 8,000 buses did not show up in our city. I call them ghost buses because they just pass you by. They're on the app, but they just pass by and they don't appear. That reality has significant impact for people in our community. People who are late for their jobs multiple times and then get fired because of that. People who miss a court date because the bus didn't show up. And that has serious legal and economic consequences. People who cannot get to a doctor's appointment that they had waited months to schedule to deal with a major issue in their lives. The fact that we do not have accountability for our CAT system, which I can discuss more if we have questions about it, is a serious issue. So I want to bring accountability to our transit system. I also want to focus on ensuring that we have fast, frequent, and reliable buses, not a light rail line that will mainly benefit, white individuals going from the airport to uptown, business travelers. I want to prioritize the backbone of our system, what people actually use, our buses. Second, housing. It is impossible to find housing that is affordable in this city, both from a rental or a home ownership perspective. I commend our current council for focusing on rental affordability and for prioritizing, individuals to be able to actually have a stable rent. But renting continues us into a cycle because you're giving away equity to somebody else. You're giving away equity to your landlord. You're not building generational wealth for you and your family. So what I want to do is three things there. Number one, I want to incentivize developers to build homes to own as opposed to build homes to rent. Number two, I want to raise our current maximum purchase price for a house from $315,000 to $400,000 or around there to reflect the current economic reality in our city. And then three, I want to work with our state legislature to implement a property tax freeze for our low income and vulnerable elderly individuals who are currently being priced out of their homes through increased property taxes. And then number three, public safety. We are hundreds of police officers short in our community, and that has multiple different ramifications. Number one, there are a lot of property crimes that are occurring in our communities that the police just don't have the opportunity to address because they're dealing with violent crime that is being committed. And when you have a so-and-so victimless crime, like a car break-in versus a murder, you're obviously going to prioritize the murder. But also, the hundreds of police officers short means that the individuals who are, going around the community in their cop cars cannot get out of their cars. They don't have the time to get out of their cars. They don't have the time to engage in their community. That is something that we need to be looked at, and we need to value our officers from a retainment perspective and a retention and a recruitment perspective, so that we can actually ensure that our communities are safe. Again, my name is Kyle Lupke. I'm running for City Council at large, and I look forward to all y'all's questions.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Tuesday morning breakfast forum family. I am LaWanna Slight Mayfield. I am one of your 4 Democratic candidates for Charlotte City Council at large. As I mentioned in the opening greeting, I formerly served you on City Council for 8 years, representing District 3. And to be perfectly honest, I've come back because multiple members of the community asked me to come back. Those of you who were around in Charlotte, you hopefully know a lot of the work that I was able to get done, even in 8 years. 8 years is a very short period of time to be on council. I served for 8 years because when I first ran, I went to the community, especially to my community leaders, and I said, give me 8 years. And when the time came, I kept to my word. I ran for at large. I did not win that time. I came in 5th for the 4 seats. So I am back again because we have some real challenges. a number of issues that I attempted to address regarding housing affordability in our city. Thankfully, we were able to create the TLC by COT housing program that was able to get in, starting in Historic and Camp Green and going to Lincoln Heights and other areas where we were able to do rehab on homes and for a number of our elders. The challenge is not everyone was able to take advantage of it. So for the 8 years I was in office, I would have quarterly town halls. I had 4 town halls every year. I created the District 3 Airport Job Fair, which created a lot of opportunities for individuals where we had a central location where the airport owners, the business owners within the airport, they needed to identify jobs that were available right then in order for our community to become connected to those opportunities. Unfortunately, that did not continue, but that created a lot of opportunities. We have a recent candidate who ran for a district seat, who's now 8 years in at the airport from attending the job fair and receiving opportunity. Fast forward to 2020, 2021, and we look at what's happening across our community regarding housing. We have to understand, we got to change that language around affordability, because Charlotte is affordable for other people coming in from other states where they were paying a much higher cost, or they were able to sell their homes and then they came to Charlotte and they were saying, oh, a house is $250,000, I pay cash. So what is the market going to do? They're going to keep increasing that price. The challenge I'm seeing now when I'm talking to, especially our elders are being displaced and there is not additional housing out there to assist them. So even when we think about how we can move forward with vouchers, if we don't have the homes and the homeowners that are willing to rent to our elders, we're going to continue to see a challenge. We have a market where investors are purchasing entire neighborhoods, and it's not just happening in Charlotte, it's happening across the nation, which is going to create a generation plus of renters. So it's not going to matter how much money you have, the housing stock is not going to be available for you to actually purchase. Council has done some really great work over the years, but we could do a lot more. I am concerned with the conversations that we're having where, honestly, there's a level of abdicating responsibility when we look at staff's recommendation and we look at a by right area, meaning under this umbrella, as long as what you are attempting to develop falls under this umbrella, by right, if you can pay for it, you can do it. That's removing the community from the conversation. So for you that are homeowners and even long-term renters that have concerns about the development that's coming into your community, we have all but erased your ability to speak with us. We have to, as council members, we need to be at community meetings, but we also need to be advocating for the community to make sure that council remembers that our responsibility is to direct the city manager and staff on how we move forward. Housing is still very important to me. That is still one of my top concerns. Transportation is very important. It was already mentioned what's happening with our bus system, but we also have to ask the question, what is it that our CATS drivers need right now? They need safety. They are concerned about their quality of life. They also have 60 days off, and we have a third-party company that is out there that manages them, so they don't have direct management through the city of Charlotte. Economic development always has and will continue to be a major concern for me because we have made billionaires in this city. And what I'm saying is we have every opportunity to ensure Black-owned businesses have the same access, and we need to be pushing for it. And we need to be putting some specifics, 20-25% expectation to ensure Black businesses have an opportunity to grow in our city. I am LaWanna Slack Mayfield. Please show up, volunteer, be out there for us because we are in early voting right now until July 23rd, and you can get more information at my website, votelawannamayfield.com. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
This is my first time in this room in a couple years. It looks great. Love what you've done with the place. Great use of technology. This looks pretty good. My name is Braxton Winston, and I serve you. I have the pleasure of serving you as a city council member at large for 2 terms, and I'm running for my 3rd term. I would appreciate your vote during early voting on election day. I continue to serve from the perspective from a three-point lens of working for a more equitable, accessible, and interconnected Charlotte. I told you when I came here 5 years ago that equity started at home. The way we build neighborhoods, the ability to live by neighbors that are not segregated economically, right? The ability to live close to good amenities like schools, jobs, food, not live in a food desert. And so when I got into office, we said, how do we do that? And we really pushed forward on saying we need to slow this process that we have called the UDO, which is creating tools without a plan. And we pushed forward that plan of the Comprehensive 2040 plan. And now equity, we're going to continue to work towards equity by the implementation of that plan. I've heard all the candidates up here talking about basically the way we have done business over time. This implementation of the Comprehensive 2040 plan really creates a paradigm shift from a deal-making city to a planning city. And so I would push back. This does not take the community out. What we need to do as a council is work with the community to show all the different steps, the planning processes that are in perpetual motion, that are and get them smart about the tools, so that different people, different parts of our community can be smart about specific parts of the planning process. For instance, whether it's putting the policies of the comprehensive plan on a map, whether it's understanding how our transportation plan fits and our streets map fits into those things. Getting this UDO pass will provide those regulations, those tools that get us into the community area planning process. Then once the community area planning process is in motion, then you have even smaller area planning processes and specific projects that have to go on. All throughout that time, those things are living documents. So it takes, again, the perpetual work of the community along with the city and our other government partners to be working on these things. So there are more places for us to not just work on one thing and then put it up on a shelf, but work with the dynamics of a changing city, of changing neighborhoods as growth patterns change over time. So that is my number one priority. How do we continue to implement this plan and get people smart, right? Access continues to be both physical and digital. Since I've been on council, we have made record investments in bridging the digital divide and making this city, putting it on a path to be the most digitally inclusive city in America. We're going to continue to do that. And of course, the infrastructure builds that are going to be coming down the line, that is going to be an important component of how we continue to do that. But of course, access is digital as well as physical. In this next term, City Council really needs to get a actionable plan in place to design and build our public transit and transportation systems of the future. We know, as has been talked about here earlier, that things like, for instance, our bus system, these are things that we've known about. These are things I'm glad that we hear people, especially from a bipartisan standpoint, talking about it in conversations that we've had many years ago. We know this bus system was designed to work in the 60s and 70s, and it hasn't been invested over time for our current needs, let alone our future needs. So we have to do that, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is working together across the communities, but across government entities, and that is that interconnected approach. Again, I'm Braxton Winston, running for my third term on City Council as an at-large member. Thank you for again having this and investing in the community in this way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank all. I haven't seen anyone raise their hand except me. Okay. You go.
Hi.
Good morning.
My name is Marcel Collins Clyburn. I'm a small business owner, hopefully future developer in this community. I am Charlotte's native. I heard a lot from the candidates this morning, some that I know, some that I don't. My specific question as a Charlottean that has lived on the west side of Charlotte, grew up on the west side, born and raised, I've now seen the multiple changes for that area. But one of the things that I have not heard, like I've heard, about the community, but specifically, if you're elected to city council, and for those who are you returning, for those who are going to be brand new, what is your specific plan for the west side of Charlotte besides getting some Wi-Fi with a little cleanup? What is a solid economic plan for the west side of Charlotte?
Okay, would you all take a minute and a half?
Wow.
Answer that question.
Sure.
And but let's gonna start with the one.
Can I ask a clarifying question? What area are you identifying as West Side?
Beatty's Ford Road
Okay.
specifically, West Boulevard specifically. And we know Bright Walk is, got some shiny things, but like really what is plans? More or less where I see the less change is definitely the 8.5 mile stretch of West Boulevard, as well as the entire Beatty's Ford Road corridor. Like I said, it has some shiny things, but specifically where is going to be an economic plan for that area?
So if we're starting with me, thank you for the question, which is a valid one. So when you go up Remount and West Boulevard, you see where we've shut down the old shopping center because there were a lot of challenges over there. I think City Council definitely has an opportunity to step in and be the leading voice of what type of new stores are invested in and supported to go into that space. You remember, since you're a native, you remember the Jack in Box that was over there. We had the police station that was over there. You started to see a little bit of growth and pick up, but then funding was allocated in other places. One of the challenges that I know previously from serving on council is a lot of the plans are already identified a decade ahead of time. And with us being on a 2-year cycle, we try to come in and we advocate, especially the district representatives, we try to advocate for additional funds for specific projects. I am not going to tell you a specific because I'm not on council currently and I haven't been there for the last 3 years. So the information I have is limited, just the community information. But what I will say is I believe we have a responsibility and an opportunity to really work directly with small businesses to look at vacant spaces that we own or that we have funded or partnered with all along from West Boulevard out Beatty's Ford, and Beatty's Ford goes beyond Johnson C. Smith University, to really look at putting small businesses and giving you the support you need to get into those spaces, and it not just be allocated for those who already are somewhat wealthy to step into those spaces. And 1 minute is a very short period of time. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your question. I'm going to focus on 2 different issues. So first one, we need to be able to have the west side. I used to live on the west side. We need to be able to have a west side that is thriving from a living perspective. There are significant food deserts on the west side, and I would like to see our Unified Development Ordinance actually allow for small little bodegas on corner stores, which also gets to an economic development where people can go and get fresh fruits and vegetables at OT Foods, which was a corner store that I used to live right across from on Tuckasegee. So that's number one. Number two, I have talked also to developers and small business owners on the west side, and certain things that the UDO is putting in are not necessarily beneficial to that community. So the Beatty's Ford Road corridor, commercial kitchens, small scale commercial kitchens are not going to be allowed under the zoning, under the UDO, the way that the mapping has been placed on the Beatty's Ford corridor. Well, that's going to significantly impact small business owners who may want to open a small little restaurant. And so we need to look specifically at how our general plans are impacting these corridors that we claim to care a lot about, and tailor the plans to those particular areas for what works for the community. Thank you.
So yeah, great question. So we have underinvested on the west side for a very long time. That's obvious. And so when we're looking at what we need to do to bring revitalization and thriving to that area, there are changes we want to make. But I want to start first with one thing that I'm concerned about is whatever changes we make, we cannot lose the character that, especially as manifested in the individuals who have lived there and are pillars of that community. And that's why I'm super concerned about gentrification and massive densification on that side of town. So that's one thing that we have to prevent first, I think, because those individuals are the soul of what that makes that community tick. But the second thing is, we talk about food deserts all the time. I was just on the west side of Lake Norman, which is like, you know, the country. They've got 2 Publixes in a town of 10,000 people. I would love bodegas, but why the heck do we not just put a Publix on the west side? So what city council needs to do, we've talked about this a lot. Yeah, and so my question is, I'm going to go down, if I get elected, I'm going to meet with the leadership of Publix and ask them the hard questions and try to put them on the record and say, if you won't build one here, explain exactly why you won't, right? Now, then we'll have some answers, right? And I think we all assume we know what the answers are, but once we can get them on the record, then we can begin to address that from a public policy perspective. Because it's ridiculous to have to drive 20 minutes to a good grocery store. Oh, so that's enough.
So there are 2 ways I want to answer this. First of all, I think part of it starts with the way we work together on council. I remind everybody that there's not one district, there's not one rep per district. There are 5 reps per district. There's a district rep and 4 at-large members. So you mentioned 2 different districts, District 2 and District 3. We need to find ways to work together better because the districts aren't fiefdoms. Right, they aren't kingdoms governed by one person. So that's one thing, and that can make a lot of things move a lot faster if we find processes where we're actually working together on council. But secondly, I'm surprised Lawana didn't jump on this because she really started some of the work of exactly what you're talking about. We have specifically West Side, West Boulevard, and Beatties Ford Road playbooks. Right, because what we have understood is that you can't just look at this from a public safety perspective, or you can't just look at it from an economic development perspective. From talking about an intersectional approach, our city entities, our departments weren't working together. So through that playbook process, which exists and you can plug into right now, we created this Corridors of Opportunity program. Those are also the types of entities that we're going to need in those types of organizations that are going to be used to plug into the planning processes that are going to come down the line. So these things are happening right now, but we have to find ways, again, to closer connect the folks in the community to those processes.
You can come back, but you don't have to wait till.
Do we have a chance up here to rebuttal or to clarify? Really? Okay then. Well, clarification.
You can circle back around next time.
To the gentleman between Kyle and Rex, I'm sorry.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah.
You mentioned the removal of the Eastland Open Air Market and the city's reluctance to act on a promise replacing it, and how those business owners were damaged as a result. What would accountability look like from a city perspective to make those business owners whole again?
Yeah. So I'm bilingual and got a chance. This was a Hispanic market, and so I had a chance to talk to a lot of the vendors. And there's one reality, which is that I do think that there is a financial recompense that the city should look into to help those people get back on their feet. Accountability means the minimum of transparency about what this process is. There were 60 people there last night. All of them were completely in the dark about what was going on. So I understand that they need about 5 acres in the city. That's not easy to find, and I understand that's a difficult challenge for city staff. But for the community to be uninformed about that and just out adrift economically during that period is unacceptable. I am actually going to a meeting right after this to meet with a landowner who potentially has land for them. So there are possibilities, but we do have to, I think one of my concerns with the whole situation is we have trouble in the city sometimes thinking outside of the box to provide real solutions for people. We're willing to hand wave and say, make promises, but we have to actually deliver. So it's transparency and it's immediate action.
Can I respond to that? To bring transparency to this process, there's more to the story. This open air market, it was organized by a person, an entity, a landlord, and those vendors paid rent to that person. And that was who the city was doing business with. And that person ended up basically being a crook. And so when we did everything that we were supposed to do and notified him, what he never did was talk to his patrons, right? So he was collecting rent from the vendors, not paying rent to the city. And ultimately, when it was time to move, right, he left town with all the money and no kind of organization that he was working with his tenants. So we have been working with these community members who have been done dirty by somebody else in the community to find some type of recompense. This is not a situation where the city has just kind of tried to pull the rug out from under very viable small businesses. So we should all be kind of work from a clear-eyed vision that this is that these are in some ways the least of us, right? Folks that don't have the type of capital investment that other types of entities have, and there are significant challenges. But we are all working very hard to find a situation that is favorable. For instance, when that entity left, we've been working for them to form a board so that we have an entity that on their side that we can work with and that they can start a business plan with.
Thank you. Okay, this question is for Braxton and for others to take note. You talked about the quarter of opportunity and the monies that you have that have been invested for the West Side. I think, and this might be something different than 34.5 billion over there for 6 communities. When you do, I'm good at basic math. When you do 6 into 34.5, that's not any money. So, I don't know if I have a question, but I think the West Side deserves more. No,
I completely, and that's why I started the answer with, we can't operate from a district perspective as a fiefdom. And when it comes down to it, that's how a lot of our policy work has been happening. That's how a lot of decisions have been being made. And I've been working very aggressively to try to raise the flag at every point, every opportunity since I've been on council to say, there's something wrong that's happening here. Things continue to happen, as Charlie said, in the Charlotte way, where a few council members with a few specific staff members or the mayor and specific business people in the community decide what is going to happen. And from a council perspective, some of us might kind of raise our arms and say, oh, hold up, we got to do this the right way. But a lot of times we flounder. And so you need to, I appreciate the follow-up. I appreciate the reaction to what I said. When it comes down to it, those are tools. Those are effective tools that we can use. But if we just kind of go about it the way that we've always gone about it, it's going to be a pittance, right? It's not ever going to be enough. So we have effective tools. Ms. Mayfield really did push the creation of that playbook structure, right? To be able to say, okay, these are the options, these are the things. As things change, we have a community presence, folks that we can talk to and go in and be nimble and do it in an open and transparent way. We have that on paper, but it's not always being executed. And this is what I'll continue to push for while I'm on council. But I need folks to help me do that?
I'll respond to this too. This is actually a perfect example on the Corridors of Opportunity program. So one of the major projects that just happened on the west side was Five Points Plaza. Great plaza. I love it. I've been there. It's wonderful. But it took the sale of $800,000 homes next to Five Points Plaza to actually get some investment into that area. So it's a little late. The people who are historically part of the community are getting pushed out and are not able to benefit from the plaza. Conversely, on Tuckasegee, sidewalks are in disrepair, potholes on Tuck and on Avalon. The entire Enderley Park neighborhood, you have buildings which are in disrepair. We have prioritized in much of the funding for the Corridors of Opportunity to areas that are gentrifying and that historical neighborhoods are not going to be able to take advantage of. And that is the Charlotte way. That is the Charlotte way that both Braxton and Charlie have talked about. Privileging those with economic opportunity already because they want nice things, as opposed to benefiting the actual communities that have been there for decades. And I would want to change that on council.
Yeah, and I will say I actually very much agree with Councilmember Winston in that there are a few members on council that are working very hard, but I think the word floundering is oftentimes, my glasses are giving me trouble, is oftentimes the right description of what goes on at council. Now the reality, this is not an excuse, just an explanation. This is a city that requires full-time management, and these are part-time jobs. However, we need city council members who are actively and proactively dedicated to solving these problems. And to Kyle's point, putting the investment in before the gentrification happens. Right now, we do a lot of throwing our hands up and being like, well, we haven't heard from the community about this or that or the other thing, or we'll take action, not to keep going back to the open air market, but like everybody on the dais jumped up to say, oh, we'll help you guys. 7 months later, after 60 people showed up and forced to yell at them. Same thing with pay raises for bus riders. It took a huge mobilization. That's ridiculous. We need city council members who are out there in the community ahead of time, not always being reactive. And that's what I think we should vote for.
I also feel like we need to have a realistic conversation, and council has the opportunity to be more transparent with communities. So the idea of Publix going on the west side. So I served District 3 for 8 years. And at that point, it was not the District 3 that we have today. I had multiple conversations with Publix and with multiple grocery stores. Here's the reality. They base their numbers off of the rooftops. So the plan was never, if you look at where investment has happened, and we just talked about gentrification and the impact, it is a plan of the community and the incomes that's going to be here later that's going to offset justifying us coming here. That is the reality, talking to the Publix leaders and the grocery store leaders. So we have this beautiful market, this community market on West Boulevard. We've had conversations with the city and the county to have a communal and to have a community grocery store, and was moving quite far along with having this model because it's successful in Raleigh, and looking at what would that look like for a community to own this grocery store and be able to build wealth. One of the biggest challenges and one of the conversations I was constantly having is, we might say that we want the Starbucks and these other things, but here's the reality. In our working class community, we were not their target. And if we don't own that house, we may not be there to see the benefits of all these great things coming into the area. And time.
Okay, Juanita.
Yes, you spoke to a lot of what I was thinking in my mind, set up my head and thinking like that. But I want to direct my questions to these two gentlemen. Can you tell us what are some of your greatest accomplishments that will prepare you to come to the city council and be an effective leader in the city of Charlotte? And on the bottom end of that, you're talking about MWBE. Who is the current MWBE coordinator for the city of Charlotte?
I'm sorry, when you're talking about Charlie and.
Yeah, these two gentlemen directly.
The twins.
Charlie.
The twins, yeah. Republican Blue Shirt Twins. You want me to go first?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, this is a good question. So, I started my own small business, and it was interesting. I had in 2014 with my own money, and we did a forum similar to this with the Minority Contractors Coalition, and one of the things that I heard in many of their stories was a amplified version of what I experienced. So as a white male, it was truthfully much easier for me than what I've heard. I want to start out with that, but it was very difficult in this city to get a small business started, and that is speaking as a white male. We are a no city many times, not a yes city. So the number of times that I was turned down for things, I was told my plan couldn't work. I was told that these types of ideas don't take off in Charlotte. Was many, but I endeavored to persevere. I did. I took a $10,000 investment in my company and grew it to a business that had $3 million in revenue after 4 years. Actually got some investors from out in California, and I lived out there for a while. I also built and I'll pause on that. One thing that I learned that was most important through that whole process, and something I don't think gets talked about enough, is that being an employer is the most important part of being a business. And honestly, at 24 years old, when I started my business, I had no idea. I thought it was, the fancy stuff. Getting good employees and treating them well is important. I don't think the city looks at itself as an employer right now, and it shows in our relationships with labor. So that's one of the major things that I plan on focusing on, is bringing that experience to bear.
So I have a lot of personal things I am very pleased with, but professionally and kind of how either or. So I care deeply about my community, the LGBT community, and I care deeply about our rights and protecting people in my community. And one of my greatest professional accomplishments is working with Councilmember Bokhari and drafting the Republican non-discrimination ordinance for LGBTQ people. And also people with natural hair, and then working with other members of council currently to pass that on a bipartisan basis. Not the version that I draft, but we had, there's negotiation. And that was that was something that I was very pleased with. And I'm actually going to other cities around the state to advocate for my community in many Republican areas that typically are not amenable to the LGBT community. The second thing I think that I am most proud of is my work in tenant rights advocacy. So I do pro bono practice. I'm a lawyer, and I do some pro bono practice in the tenant space. And if anybody remembers the Lake Arbor debacle that happened a couple of years ago, I represented one of the tenants in the Lake Arbor situation and was able to get him a settlement that was sizable enough that he was able to go and purchase a home. And, small amount of money, but it meant everything to him. And hearing that story and having that engagement is something that I value.
Okay.
And you didn't answer the last one. Who's the current MWBE coordinator for the city now?
I do not know.
Does
Honestly.
anyone know? You talk about minority women business. Who is the person that you go to in the city?
Steve. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's Steve Coker. Yes. Steve Coker. If you want to email me, I can connect you with them.
Okay, next we have Natalie that has a question.
I'm working on an elderly concern, being most of the major roads in Charlotte, I shouldn't say most, I don't know if it's most, but many of the major roads in Charlotte are state-owned, and I want to have the lines on those roads painted, because as a senior, my eyesight is not as good at night, and I am told there isn't anything that can be done about it, and everyone is going to experience that difficulty seeing at night. And I can't go out on the major roads at night because I cannot see well enough without the lights. I've been told by the mayor that I need my state legislators to get the state to paint those roads. But I maintain that the state should be happy to have us take on that responsibility because it saves them money. Can I get lines on that road? Mr. Majid, that.
Yeah.
Right.
He represents.
I stay right.
You-
Yeah.
I
Where's-
can.
I can give you address, but I don't know, I mean.
Well, I guess what road are you talking about? So we have
W.T. Harris.
W.T. Harris. That's a state maintained road.
Right.
Yeah. So
And it is impossible to see.
yes,
on W.T. Harris at night. You can barely
I know.
see the lines during the day, and needless to say, it's a hazard.
so city maintains the street lights on W.T. Harris. So in fact, in Vision Zero, that city council approved the street lights. I agree. That's the reason. So on W.T. Harris, the stretch between Old Concord Road and Plaza have no lights at all, which we as a council, as part of our Vision Zero program, we approved additional funding just this year. And even though it's a state maintained road, city is taking the responsibility to maintain our street lights. While I'm on this topic, I also want to highlight that states have cut our city's budget for our state maintained projects. And you can talk to Mr. Majid about that. And we are having to fund that gap. And that was $3 to $5 million. Or was it?
More than that.
It was more than that. I think it was called
Powell bill.
the Powell bill. So I'm hoping with Mr. Majid's support that we fill that gap, but cities across the state are continuing to pick up the slack by the state because they are punishing urban areas like ours that are thriving.
So this is what I mean by interconnection, and we have to figure this out. It's not just Harris Boulevard. I would push back on one thing. This doesn't save the state any money necessarily. What would be a double taxation for residents of Charlotte because we pay state taxes but are not getting the state funding to maintain those roads, right? That funding is going elsewhere. So if we have city maintained roads, right? So if the state is going to not fund those roads, then we need to find a pathway that we can have more control over those roads, because there are also policy areas where legally we can't just go and meddle on state property. So, this, as Ms. Ajmira was talking about, this isn't just about paint. This is about resurfacing. This is about curb and gutters. This is about lights and things like that. So many roads that run through us, North Tryon, Albemarle, Independence, not only are they not being maintained to our standards, they're being designed and built in ways that don't fit our dense urban setting. They fit paradigms that are being used in different parts of the state. So I'm happy to propose that we find a way that we take full control over our streets. But that is going to have incredible tax implications. The way we fund roads here and is by floating these bonds, right? You pay for us to take out debt every year, every 2 years. There's like hundreds of millions of dollars on the ballot to do that. If you want to start painting Harris Boulevard, every city maintained road, then that money is going to have to come from somewhere, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be employees, whether it be police, fire. We have to pay for it, and but we can only do it if we work with our partners in Raleigh and across the state.
Okay.
Can I respond to this question too? I think that this entire discussion of what Mr. Tamara and Mr. Winston just said actually brings up a really great point. Over $10 million stripped from our transportation budget at the city level for Charlotte by the Republican majority in the General Assembly. Well, why is that? It's because we don't have any Republicans advocating for the city at large at the General Assembly. there has been a lot of engagement in an acrimonious way between the city of Charlotte and the General Assembly. I mean, the transit tax is one particularly important example of this, where there's no communication, there is a lack of ability to find common ground, and you need people who are speaking the language of the General Assembly and the majority to actually go to Raleigh and say, this is why you need to care about urban areas and not strip us of our funding.
So can I just counter? I don't think the problem is really in this case, specifically on Powell bill. It's not about Democrats versus Republican. It's really about urban versus rural. I mean, that is the core of the issue. In fact, we have Republican colleagues on Charlotte City Council who has advocated for this, but they haven't been successful. In fact, a co-chair of our intergovernmental committee, along with Mr. Winston, is a Republican, but they haven't been successful. So by saying that having Republican member at large,
Republican.
That's yes. Yes.
Parties on us, Brad.
But yeah, so having to say that having a Republican member at large would change that, I don't know.
And to that point, sorry, just to clarify, the Republican General Assembly, when that budget went to the governor's desk, had that money in there. So when the governor signed it with whoever he talked to, it was partly his decision to strip that money. So I agree with Ms. Ejmira. This is not a straight partisan issue, because the Republican General Assembly actually put that money in there. Something happened between closed door negotiations that we have not been able to figure out for what happened. Yeah.
Good morning. I love when people talk about Lake Arbor, because I remember when the city told us to go somewhere else, the county told us to go somewhere, it wasn't their problem. Because I was instrumental in opening that can of worms. So I want everybody to know that. But this group does. I did talk to the mayor about this particular incident, and I want to open up to the ones who are here, who's the city board, and then y'all can tell me what y'all are doing. And then the new ones, you can tell me what you would try to do to make it even happen. We're having serious problems with housing. You already know that. We have a serious problem with developers coming in here taking over. We have serious problems where they're leasing everything. Nobody can even find a house anymore. So we got all of these problems, but we keep our city open. Our city is open, but we're going to close the door. So the thing is, we got all these problems, and people are still being homeless with housing. So, and I try to go or listen to a lot of your the zoning thing, because y'all, what can we do? Because the mayor didn't give me a good answer. So what can y'all do, and what can the new people think they can do to make it even better to end this housing for people who need housing when they still can't afford these housing, what they're putting up, and it's getting ridiculous all over the place, all over the city. In my little small area, person bought this piece of plot of land like this, 4 houses on it, and leased every last one of them.
Okay, we'll start with those that are already said. Jennifer, you want to start?
Sure.
1.5 minutes.
Yes, that's a lot of time to solve this issue, right? We know that affordable housing is a crisis in our city. The reason that I decided to run for city council was really to tackle affordable housing. Prior to serving on the city council, I served on the Charlotte Housing Authority, now it's called Inlivian, where we have over 25,000 people in our waiting list, waiting to get affordable housing. But we also have to realize that this issue alone cannot be addressed by city alone, right? We have invested $50 million in affordable housing bond referendum, which is more than triple of what we had prior to 2017. We went from 15 to $50 million. We are investing in our NOAA, which is naturally occurring affordable housing. We are investing through our COVID dollars we received in rent relief and mortgage relief. So we are doing everything that we can, but we must realize we are working against the market force. And the root of the issue is that people are not getting livable wage. When I served on the Housing Authority Board, I quickly realized that it wasn't that people were not working. The problem was they were making minimum wage, and you cannot afford to live in the city of Charlotte if you're making less than less than $20 an hour. Then my time is up. So
Again, this really starts and finishes on how we build neighborhoods. The city council and the city of Charlotte has had policies over generations that has restricted housing being built. So that's why you have a lack of supply of housing that drives up costs. So what we are doing is creating a map that allows for a diversity of products to be built. There are literal products that have been illegal for generations to build, and that would provide different types of housing choice, a diverse price point housing to exist in close proximity. Again, close to those amenities. It costs more to be poor and on the lower rungs of the middle class in Charlotte, like it is in a lot of cities because of the way we have developed. We have to fix that. That is the most direct way that we can affect this. Of course, that's a long-term issue, a long-term thing. So, but to Ms. Ajmira's point, in a more short-term basis, we can work with our partners to make sure that our residents are able to be upwardly economically mobile. We're at a very disruptive point in time in so many different sectors. And right now is the opportunity to get people into good paying jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago, to be completely honest. And folks, we don't want to close the doors to this city. There are more opportunities coming in, and we have to get our people prepared for those opportunities.
I'm thankful that Mr. Winston, I appreciate you using my tagline of diverse price point housing, because we need to change the conversation. One of the things that I would like to see coming back in is a different conversation. So a conversation in the form of not one, but multiple symposiums that one have Charlotte Realtors, our Black Realtor Association, because another conversation we're not having is a lot of individual people own multiple properties throughout our city. We have some neighbors that own anywhere from 5 to over 100 properties, not just the investors that own properties. So we can have a conversation with them about looking at what would it look like for us to be able to partner, to have those long-term renters to be able to purchase those homes. It was mentioned earlier regarding the increase, because right now it is very limited based on federal guidelines how much the city is able to contribute to a down payment assistance. But $315,000, you can't even find a $315,000 home in Charlotte right now. Also, if you're a family of two and you make $70,000, you're eliminated from that conversation. One of the many things that I proposed back in 2018, I proposed to the city manager, I was looking at homes that were coming up for sale. And I said, we can buy these under our current model and we'll figure out which partner gets to them later. We didn't know what was going to happen with 2020, 2021. We did not pull that trigger. The world changed. Houses are $100,000 to $300,000 more. Hindsight's 2020. Had we done it, it could have helped some. Now we need to look at how do we move forward, and it's going to take funding and it's going to take joint support.
So I have a comment and then a solution. So the first comment, what is experiencing in your neighborhood with somebody tearing down a single family home and then putting up a quadplex where they then rent for not, above market asking price, and that's unaffordable, that is going to be under the Unified Development Ordinance allowed in almost every single part of the city, especially on the west and north side. So density does not equal affordability. We need to figure out how to make things affordable, not necessarily dense. Number two, though, what I would like to see, we're going to have another $50 million bond for affordable housing by the end of the year. And I would actually like to see us focusing that dollars on the under 30% AMI, which is the people teetering on homelessness. It's very expensive to build for individuals in that community because of the amount of money that they are able to contribute. But I would like to see maybe us work with developers who want to build shared housing models. So, for example, like the room and board kind that we had, back in the day, where you have shared living spaces, but you have your own, your own room. I think that that would help solve situations like under 30% AMI, and something that we could really focus on to get people outside of, outside of teetering on homelessness or homelessness.
So quickly to jump in, that's already happened. Can we clarify?
Not with shared housing.
It's called communal.
Question.
I know.
Well, then can I make a comment?
It's a challenge.
Yeah. So one thing, all this with zoning policy gets confusing sometimes. Here's one thing that I think we should make clear, and I would love to see this more clear from City Council. City Council needs to have two priorities, like big picture priorities. The first priority is to the current citizens of Charlotte, North Carolina. Second priority can be to people who are coming here later. But oftentimes I feel like we have that mixed up. We prioritize who's coming here, and we leave behind those who are already here. I also hear a lot from the current City Council that a lot of hands in the air, we can't do anything about the market. I'm a Republican, I believe in the market. I'm a businessman, I believe in the market. I think when it comes to institutional investors, though, and people who are buying up all of our housing stock, we need to use the weapons of the market back against them. What is our biggest industry here in Charlotte? It's banking. We have two of the largest banks in the world that have their major headquarters here. Why are we not partnering with them to have them hold some of our housing stock under the requirement that they provide a rent-to-own process? We can get much more bang for our buck money-wise rather than subsidizing rent to instead provide property tax incentives to local banks to, if institutional people are going to be buying our housing stock, let's get friendly institutional people to buy our housing stock with strings attached. And I think that's a real way we can solve this at scale.
Okay.
Can't break away
Thank
from
you.
banks.
This is where we're gonna
We
go.
cannot,
We have Mary,
I mean, really getting fired from Raleigh if you were
Teddy,
to
and
do
then
tax abatement.
we need to come back to Marcel and Winston. Yeah, Marcel and Winston. So Mary, and we're asking you 30 seconds for the question and 1 minute for the answer, because we have to be out of here by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Mary, 30 seconds.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly say, Winston brought up something about the city council, about how, just because you are representing a district doesn't mean that you don't represent all of Charlotte. And I found that to be true because people always say, your district rep is. So what I want to know is, are you going to represent all of Charlotte or just I know that all of you are at large.
Yeah.
But if I were to call Winston, if I were to call any of you, and I live in a certain district, are you going to just refer me to that person, or are you going to try to help me solve my problem?
No, I would absolutely help you solve the problem. We have staff members, and again, this gets back to the governance part of it. As an at-large member, one of the benefits of being a district rep is you do have a specific area that you can focus on. As an at-large member, you do have to be responsive to all 7 districts, and you have to understand. You have to be in all 7 districts to understand ideas that work in certain places. And when I was first elected, City Council only had 2 staff members that were helping the entire City Council. So it helped 11 different council members communicate and interact from a constituent service standpoint. That is something that we have fought to change internally. It's things that you don't always see, but we need to have more, especially from an at-large perspective. We need to be supported, especially since we have to go to work additionally, so that we can be more responsive. And this is where, again, this internal structure really needs to change in our governance model.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Winston has said. This council has fought to ensure that we are providing more timely constituent service. In the past, we have had, like Mr. Winston said, only 2 staff for 11 of us. Now we have 5 staff for 11 of us. And the number of calls and emails that we get, it's overwhelming. We need more support, but we are going to continue to work on that behind the scenes. But I know, Miss Mary, that every time you call, you know that I never say that this is not District 2. Yeah.
Pick up the phone and she'll answer.
No, but I'm, every time someone calls me, regardless of what district you live in, I I have always answered the call. I will work with the district rep to address the concerns. I know Mama Ivory has called me a few times about concerns in District 2. But really, as an at-large member, you represent everyone in the city.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's why I got into this, is to provide services to the whole city. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I would agree as well. And I'm actually going to give props to Dimple here. There was a man that came to council, I think it was 2 weeks ago during public comment, and was ignored by his current district rep. And then he communicated with another at-large member, and they told him they didn't have time to deal with him. And then Ms. Asmera, he called her, she got it done. So,
Thank you.
that is, I think, important that our district, our at-large reps actually are responsive. And so we have someone who has demonstrated that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Teddy.
Okay. Jackie.
We had spoken earlier about, public's coming in, but, I have a concern with public in that they did fund January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
My question, though, has to do with where do you stand on single room occupancy? And Cal, I think you dealt a little bit with it. Single room occupancy, such as supportive housing on Plaza. But, we have persons who are homeless, who've been in hotels, and single room occupancy, SROs, which solve a lot of our issues, especially with those who come from Tent City and from closing apartments.
This is something that we do already invest in, but we need to invest in more. And it kind of honestly dovetails into the food desert conversation. This is the area where we need to work better and more interconnected with the county. Part of those those SRO models is that you have to, for those to be successful, they have to provide wraparound services.
Yep.
So we need a more nimble way that we can work across those, and those types of services are provided by the county. We need a more nimble way, especially as the county dives into being a stronger affordable housing developer as well. And that is, they have the services to provide those 0 to 30 AMI investments. That's where we really need to focus on creating policy that allows our staff and utilizing all of our financial tools to invest in that. So those investments in SROs aren't just happening a couple times a decade. They're happening to the scale that is necessary. And I think this is something that we've all talked about and we've made progress on, but not enough.
And I agree. And there's a conversation that we're also not having. It is happening right now outside of government support, and it's called communal housing.
Yes.
So there is a lot, and those are individual private owners that own multiple properties that have the ability, and they started many years, more than a decade ago, where you can rent out a room and have the living room area, kitchen area as the communal space. That has been happening. Some of those investors we need to be talking to and bring to the table to look at, can we get them to agree, and what would it take to have them agree to partner with both the city and the county to provide those services? Because a lot of these homes are along the bus line and in areas where there are good schools and they have libraries and they have other resources. So I completely support us growing, and I support the current council with growing what SRO is. I also think we need to bring those investors who have been doing this for more than a decade locally to the table to look at their models and see if we can expand it.
And I would agree with that. And thank you for the clarification that it's already happening. We need to be doing more at the city level to be actually ensuring that under 30% AMI is being supported through SROs, which right now I do not feel as though we are doing. Maybe, because it is so cost prohibitive for us to do so with our affordable housing dollars. I also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I also I don't believe in recreating the wheel. I think we can look at other cities and see what they've been doing and been successful on. The city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example, has a really awesome program. It's called A Better Way, where they coordinate with, the transportation sector, and they go and pick up individuals in the city who are experiencing homelessness, give them a living wage to pay for a day's work of maybe beautification, and then they connect them with the necessary services in order to get those people experiencing homelessness off the street. So I think we can do something like that too.
Charlie, do you have something to say?
Thank you, but this has been well stated, and I agree.
Now we have Teddy, and then after Teddy, we have this young man right here. And then we're gonna do Marcel, and Winston, and Carlenia. Please, 30 seconds for the question. 1 minute for the answer. And if one of the candidates answer the question, just say you agree with them for the candidate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about housing, it's important, but we all know you're not gonna build your way out of this problem. And I want to know all of you, or a couple of your opinions on doubling or tripling the city's investment workforce development. We got to train people here for these tech jobs. We get all these announcements and subsidies, people companies coming in. But if you don't train people to buy more homes, or get higher wages, and I don't mean $15 an hour. Livable wage with the benefit, not less than 30. So what's your opinion on workforce development?
Yes, so yes, double, triple, the way City Council can do that is by expanding our economic development policies for the industries that we target and that we invest in. I think we can do that across a spectrum of industries. We've done that since we've got on council. We need to do more of that.
Yeah, I'm tired of all the economic development announcements being, like you mentioned, tech companies and fintech and all that stuff. We need to also, if we're going to be doing that type of corporate welfare, we should be doing it towards people who have entry-level jobs and who have manufacturing. There's still opportunities for that. It's frustrating that that hasn't happened. That goes back to the Charlotte way as well. And one other quick thing is that the other lever that Charlotte has is its own procurement process and its own RFP process. Kyle and I are both advocates of breaking up RFPs into smaller chunks so that minority and women owned small businesses have the ability on their own accord to bid on those contracts in smaller increments and then build up capabilities that way. So those are two kind of levers that we can use.
I agree with both Braxton and.
I want to hear about mid-level jobs. Talk too much about entry
Yes,
we
have an opportunity. Yes, council has an opportunity to lead it, even when you think about the CATS buses and the electric buses that have broken down. But yet we did not partner with Urban League, with Goodwill, with other training services to give you the funding to train people here locally to prepare those buses. That right there is mid-level jobs to be able to get in and do that type of work. So we can be very strategic in how we move forward. We just need a council that's going to collectively recognize, support it, and move the city manager to say this is the direction we want to go.
And I will jump on this very quickly too. A lot of this also comes down to zoning policy. We are losing industrial parcels in our city, and they're being converted to things like breweries. Industrial manufacturing is those mid-level jobs that you're talking about, and the fact that we are not having the forward looking of what is having manufacturing located in our city, what does that look like? I think we need to be taking a look at the zoning code again, saying, okay, let's be targeted so we can attract these mid-level jobs.
Teddy, you are part of our Renew program, right? Yeah. Yeah, right. We are expanding that. So Renew program is one partnership we have with we have Project Peace, but that's just this. Obviously, we need to do more, which I agree with Mr. Winston on. But I just wanted to highlight the work that we are doing, which is a Project Peace program, Renew program that actually have created a lot of jobs and opportunities for our youth. And these are folks that we are talking about upward mobility here through this program that's been very successful because of the partnership with your organization. So I wanted to highlight that.
My question is to relate to public safety. Could each of you give me an idea or method that you're going to help recruit police officers?
I can give one very specific example. In the city of Charlotte, police officers are not able to take their cars home. Most other cities allow that, and that has significant recruitment, potential in our city, because If you have to have a second car as a police officer, that's a car payment. That's an additional expense that you have versus if you can just take your squad car home
So
to use.
yeah, to clarify that, you can't, if you live outside the city, you can't take your squad car.
Yeah, you can.
We changed that.
But I think this is what I've heard directly from law enforcement. Pay matters, but that's not the major thing. Fortunately, because that's expensive for the city. What matters most, and this does not need to be unqualified endorsement, but there is a very real feeling among law enforcement that the city does not have their back. That if it is a difficult situation, they have a 50-50 call to make, the city will throw them under the bus. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think it is incumbent on, and it could just be a feeling, but I think it's incumbent on the city council, and this is symbolic and it's free, to when we get inaugurated to come in and say, if you are lawfully, emphasis on lawfully, engaging in your duties, we will have your back.
Okay, so what else?
Yeah, I want to, so to clarify, this budget year was the first time that I've ever seen where the chief of police requested less police officers.
Yes.
Whether that be uniform officers or command staff. He requested less. So we don't necessarily need more police officers. Where he did increase is in civilian positions that can help with the investigatory process. But I think the public knows, I have been adamantly aggressive towards changing policing, right? And where the chief and I have a lot of common ground is that what we're asking police to do is not the job of police. Police don't prevent crime. They investigate crimes once they've been committed. So we are finding different response models. We're creating different types of response models that provide the types of services that people in emergencies actually need. And so that police officers, law enforcement officers can focus on just that. Enforcing the law once it's suspected to have been broken. And so there's encouraging models that we're creating and that we're investing in right now.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to highlight the public safety pay plan. How many of you know about our public safety pay plan? Oh, well, that was, public safety pay plan was put in place to address recruiting and retention of our police officer, our good police officers. And council has made great stride in tackling and bringing the pay to be competitive, because we were losing a lot of our good talent to private sector. And we had to change that through our public safety pay plan, which we have done that. And I know Mr. Winston and I have both supported that public safety pay plan increase.
I support Mr. Winston's comments.
Okay. Marcel?
Yes. So I'm gonna ask a question. I'm gonna keep it short. So for the Eastern Mall development, I mean, you know, we all kind of went through the process, but we haven't heard anything. Like, what is the plan for the land? And if you're going to put housing on the property? Absolutely. I know, like, I've heard a lot of in the meetings that they don't want affordable housing, but we know affordable housing is an issue. So will there be affordable housing on that land? But then for the additional land, what is the real plan for it? Like, what is the progress? What's happening?
Okay, we'll just let our ones that are serving right now.
Yes. Well, Eastland redevelopment has come a long way. We have a plan in affordable housing is part of the plan, and that is going to have amenities to serve the communities. This area has been left undeveloped for over a decade now, and this has been one of my priority areas since the day I started on the Charlotte City Council. In fact, we will be seeing groundbreaking next month. So I hope you will join us at our groundbreaking in August. But we are really excited to see this come through and really have jobs and opportunities in all parts of our city. I'm sorry? Housing, retail, it's really mixed use.
Greenfields, there's medical facilities going to be there. This is really an exercise in a planning process, right? That deals with a large tract of land that is honestly is going to, as the market changes, you have to change with it. So that's why it's been taking so long. But again, it is I think we created a good process that allows the community, the city and private investors to work together through some very tumultuous times. But as the council member said, we should be breaking ground in a couple weeks.
Okay, both Charlie and Braxton mentioned that the business owners from the Eastland Open Air Market should the city should recompense.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
We with you.
Yeah. So in that ideology, how should local government recompense the Black people from places like Brooklyn who were stripped of significant wealth with specificity?
Yeah, I mean, I think stopping doing the things that we did is the key first step. So this is one of my major concerns about the UDO, is that, so Brooklyn, to lesser extent, Cherry, experienced urban renewal, which is the government having a dedicated policy of removing Black individuals from those neighborhoods. This is not the same in the UDO, and that's not the intended consequence. However, I'm afraid that the results will be similar, just because that is the only place where we can quickly build things when we remove restrictions. That's what's going to happen. Obviously, that is not the intent, but it's one of the reasons, with that in mind, that is one of the reasons why I'm opposed to the UDO, is specifically trying to not repeat the injustices of the past.
So I think, from an open air market versus Brooklyn, two different things, but
Sure.
similar in vein. Open air market, we need to find a place that they can economically develop. From Brooklyn's standpoint, I mean, I'm talking direct payments, right? There are people around and they have their estates that we literally, along with the federal government, picked up and moved and displaced and destroyed the communities. We can trace that back and we can quantify that. This really a reparation program really should be something that starts with the federal government from a grand scheme, but from a specific spot, like what we did to the neighborhood of Brooklyn, that needs to be quantified and folks can be made whole. On top of that, we need to go back and look at those promises, because I accept responsibility for that, because we're a continuous body, and look at those promises and act upon them. So I think it's a two-part: direct payments and putting our policies,
We're going past 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
But Colleen, you want to ask your question right here?
Thank you. I would like for you to send this back. I'm obviously taking notes, and we're doing accountability. People come and tell us all this stuff, and we don't hear back. So what I'd like, if you will email us, Mary, Laura, myself, and let us know, based upon what you've heard here today, regarding our challenges. What I'd like to know is one thing that you are going to commit to doing and are bringing up in the next 3 to 6 months to try to rectify some of the challenges or concerns that we mentioned here today.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could, and then we'll follow back up with you. But if you could please do that, we would appreciate it. You do more than one, but 2, but we will be, checking back to see about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all so very much. You all have got us going again.